The mistake that makes you lose respect without realizing it. There's someone in your life, maybe at work, maybe in your family, maybe in a group of friends, that you stopped taking seriously. It wasn't a conscious decision. There was no dramatic moment. At some point, something simply shifted. And when that person speaks, you hear them, but you don't really listen. When they share an opinion, you consider it, but dismiss it quickly. When they need you, you help, but without that full presence you give to very few people. Now turn that camera around. What if you were that person to someone else? What if, without realizing it, you are committing exactly the mistake that erodes people's respect for you? Not explosively, not obviously, but in a quiet, invisible, accumulative way. That is what I want to explore with you. Because the mistake that destroys respect is rarely what people think it is. It's not rudeness, it's not incompetence, it's not a declared lack of character, it's something far more subtle. And precisely because it's subtle, it's almost impossible to see in yourself. I'm going to ask you to stay until the end, because what I'm about to share will require you to look at places most people avoid looking. There is a principle that behavioral psychology and ancient wisdom confirm in different ways, yet arrive at the same place. People don't lose respect for you because of what you do. They lose respect for you because of the gap between what you say and what you actually live. And that gap, when it exists, doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. Think about it. Have you ever been in the presence of someone who said all the right things, spoke about integrity, discipline, values, but there was something in the air that didn't quite add up, a lightness in the speech that didn't match the density of someone who had genuinely lived those things? You probably couldn't name what it was, but you felt it. Everyone feels it. That's the human brain operating at a frequency that precedes language. We are social animals who evolved detecting incoherence long before we developed words to describe it. The problem is that most people respond to this internal incoherence by trying to improve their speech, refining their communication, learning more content, developing emotional vocabulary. And all of that has value, but it's solving the wrong symptom. Because what the people around you are perceiving is not what you say, it's who you are when no one is watching, and that being seeps through. It leaks through the cracks of everyday behavior. Let me give you a concrete example, because this needs to come out of the abstract. Imagine a leader. It could be in a company, in a family, in any group. This leader talks constantly about calm, about not reacting on impulse, about thinking before acting. He recommends this to everyone around him, but when something doesn't go as planned, when someone questions him under pressure, when control slips slightly out of his hands, he reacts. Not catastrophically, but he reacts. A tone that shifts, a response sharper than it needed to be, a decision made through emotion disguised as logic. And then he recovers, moves on, and perhaps doesn't even remember the episode, but the people around him remember. Not necessarily with resentment, but it registers. And each time it repeats, something quietly adjusts inside them. A layer of respect dissolves. Not respect for the position, that may remain intact, but respect for the person. That kind doesn't recover easily. Here is the point most people never consider. Genuine respect is not built in grand moments. It is built, or destroyed, in insignificant ones. In the way you react when traffic makes you late, in the way you speak about people who aren't in the room, in the quiet consistency between what you preach and what you practice when there is no stage, no audience, nothing to gain from the performance. And here begins the shift I need you to understand. The greatest mistake is not the incoherence itself. Every human being has incoherences. We are complex, contradictory, permanently in process. The greatest mistake, the one that truly erodes respect in a way that becomes difficult to reverse, is the inability to recognize the incoherence when it appears. It is the person who makes a mistake and justifies it, who fails and explains why it actually wasn't a failure, who reacts badly and then reshapes the narrative in a way that always positions them as the victim of circumstances or other people. That movement, that self-preservation reflex that psychology calls cognitive dissonance, is the slow poison of respect. Because the people around you have memory, and they observe not only what you do, but how you handle what you do. A leader who makes a mistake and owns it, with clarity, without drama, without excessive self-punishment, but with real accountability, earns something no performance can buy: credibility. The kind of credibility that survives storms. A leader who makes a mistake and redirects blame, who minimizes, who builds sophisticated arguments to prove they were actually right, that leader loses, layer by layer, the trust of the people who matter most. And when they finally notice, it's usually too late to understand where the ground gave way. I want to ask you something, and I'll ask you to resist the temptation to answer quickly. When was the last time you made a mistake with someone, in a relationship, a decision, a reaction, and owned it with clarity, without packaging the mistake inside a context that justified it, without conditioning your apology on the other person's behavior? When was the last time you simply said, "I was wrong, that was on me, and I want to make it right"? If that happens naturally in you, frequently, easily, you are building something solid.
If it's difficult, if there's always a but, if responsibility tends to be shared, even when the mistake was clearly yours, that is where respect is being spent without replenishment. There is a spiritual maturity that goes beyond techniques and strategies. It is the maturity of not needing to be right. It is the capacity to hold the discomfort of being wrong without that threatening who you are. And that level of internal solidity is not achieved through theory. It is achieved through real, quiet, daily work. The work of facing your own shadow without escaping into the narrative that casts you as the hero of your own story. Carl Jung said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What he was describing was exactly this: the patterns that operate below our awareness, that express themselves in behavior, that the people around us perceive before we do ourselves, and that we, protected by the defense mechanisms the ego has built over an entire lifetime, resist seeing. The way out is not punishment. It is not devastating self-criticism. It is not transforming yourself into a being of light who never makes mistakes. The way is consciousness, followed by honest action. It is developing the capacity to observe yourself without defending yourself, to receive feedback without processing it as an attack, to face the distance between who you say you are and who you are actually being, not with shame, but with the seriousness of someone who understands that real growth demands exactly that kind of courage. The respect that matters, the kind that remains when you leave the room, the kind that exists without needing to be sustained by position or performance, that respect is built in the silence of character. It is built when you do the right thing even when it's hard, when you own your mistakes even when it hurts, when you act with integrity even when no one is watching. And the deepest irony of all of this is that when you stop pursuing respect, when you stop managing the impression others have of you and begin focusing on who you genuinely are, that is precisely when true respect begins to settle in on its own, effortlessly, as the natural consequence of who you have become. So the question that remains is not what you need to change to be more respected. The question is, who are you being when no one is watching? Because that answer defines everything else. If something in this video touched something real in you, it's worth sitting with it, not as guilt, as direction. Sometimes the most valuable thing we can do is simply stop, look honestly, and ask, where am I giving in to the incoherence I don't want to see? If you want to continue this conversation, share in the comments what stayed with you, not what you thought of the video, what you saw in yourself.